Okay, this is going to be another episode of Thorin and Loco versus Worlds. But before we introduce to you our thrilling and unexpected guest who you've never seen on any shows that we've been involved with before, just like to let you know that this video is brought to you by GG Esports, which you may have heard mentioned in some of our past videos. It's a site which features statistical odds and contests based around games like League of Legends. So you can go, you can see VODs from past games, you can look up stats on particular teams and matchups and who the players are, etc. And then you can play as part of a leaderboard where when you play there, you get for start off, if you just register and make an account on the site, you get like play coins, and then when you make, I guess you'd call them wagers on this particular leaderboard, if you succeed in, I don't know, getting the right ones, I'm free balling this one, then you can exchange those gems for things that actually exist outside of the site. So that's the shortest way to say it. If you can't figure out that abstract concept, we'll probably refer back to it later in the show. So welcome. Right. Guest for this episode is going to be Kelsey Moser, not Karen Moser, as many people often confuse her on Reddit and wonder. I mean, that would actually be the real baller move, Kelsey. I don't know why you haven't thought of coming with this yet. Is that when you made this like hard pivot recently to being all about like your developed on-camera presence, you know, this quirky, upbeat sort of character, you know, who's making little jokes, you know, bringing people along. You should have just said that was like your cousin, Karen Moser, who's getting into doing videos, you know, and then you could have the real one. You could have your old glasses on like, welcome. I'm just going to introduce Karen here. She's kind of a bit bubbly, so enjoy, guys. And then no one would know, because we all know that if you just literally take 5 minutes and put the lipstick on, no one even knows it's the same person, as all the comments attest to. So, right, that's the way we introduce people on my shows, Loco. It's a lot of sort of like low-level, just impolite observations, but I spice them up to sound as though I'm sort of bantering with the person, bringing them into the show, and we don't want to do like a cold intro. So how are you doing anyway, Loco? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I accidentally marked the time wrong for this, so I'm sorry about that. And I'm glad Kelsey can be here for us.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Loco. For the sake of our on-camera relationship, mistakes happen. So, you know, these things can happen, and I would never be such a petty individual that I would hold it against someone like that on camera. Again, yes, as part of the on-camera relationship. So yeah, it's fine.
You made mistakes, and I've always been super polite about it. Okay.
I don't know about that. I did say TSM was trash in season 4, and so I don't know. I think history did bear me out on that one. So you know what? As long as I get the big picture ones right, those are the ones that matter, aren't they? So.
Plus, your name is literally in the title of the show, so if you wake up late, like Cyrene did, they can't actually remove you from the broadcast, got a little bit of insurance there.
Oh, wow.
The only thing I couldn't handle with that was like I understand that like on one level that whole situation was like, it's fine, you know, you were wrong, you shouldn't have turned up late like he did on that particular broadcast, but like he did go a little bit too far, like make himself some like next level martyr on that way. He was like, and besides, I don't deserve to cast these games. Like, mate, listen, I don't know if you've been keeping track of the whole Riot Worlds things for the last few years. You more than deserve that. You're basically doing it. Well, I can't really know if he's doing it for free at this point in time, but it ain't good luck for that way. That's all I'm going to tell you. If I was doing that particular game, you'd be having to pay me about 30k to do what you're doing at that point in time. So unless they're racking up those sorts of numbers, I wouldn't worry about it so much if you skip one little meeting. So, and also, to be fair, if you'd have been within the time zone that the event was taking place, you'd have woken up on time, wouldn't you? So in many ways, we could all circle this back to beating up Riot like everyone knows we're supposed to do. So anyway, speaking of beating people up, this particular episode, Loco, is going to be a prediction for the quarterfinals. And since obviously there's just 4 quarterfinal matches, we're going to go series by series, and we're going to talk about a matchup which I actually think coming into the tournament, if you'd have told people this matchup was possible, they would have had very little interest whatsoever, which is Royal Never Give Up up, literally the consensus favourite for Worlds in many people's eyes, because they've won everything this year. And then you've got G2 Esports, who was a team who came through the play-in. In fact, they lost their first game against the Infinity Esports team in the play-in, which led to them, and I noticed in the group stage, sort of getting a lot of like reduced expectations. And most people looked at the group that they were in and said, okay, they've maybe got chances to get out, but I know a number of people weren't necessarily picking them, because actually, interesting detail about their group, which was the one that had Afrika Freaks, obviously a heavy favourite for that group. It had Flash Wolves, who despite being almost universally underrated every year, actually came in. A lot of people said they were going to be quite strong in this particular group. And then most notably, the Vietnamese team, Phong Vu Buffalo, actually had a number of people who'd watched their games who said that they're not just going to be a complete joke wildcard team. And a lot of this came to pass, actually. So Kelsey, let's just start there with like how G2 got to this point in the tournament. Like in this particular group, what did you think?
I feel like G2 kind of got off super easy without teams were preparing for them, because I think a lot of people focused on the Camille and what the Camille was doing. But for me, it was like, okay, you're leaving up. There are two champions that you deny their bot lane, and their bot lane, I guarantee, will not do anything. And that's Tom Kench and Heimerdinger. And the only team that was consistently denying those picks, and then of course, like in one game, they banned it themselves, was Phong Vu. And so Phong Vu had like a way better showing. I would say Phong Vu's showing against G2 was consistently better than either Afrika or Flash Wolves. They just weren't good enough to close out the last game.
Okay. That is a bit strange, because I remember, for example, when we were watching the EU LCS, I think it was the Gauntlet and the playoffs, almost every time Wadid got Tom Kench, like they actually would either win the game or a very good game, and every time he didn't, they would shit out of luck, basically. Do you think, I mean, I know Afrika Freaks basically implied with with their first game against G2 that they like purposely left up like the Heimerdinger or whatever. So
yeah, that was so dumb.
Had teams actually scouted this and they just actually thought that this would like allow them in some sense to contain G2, like we know what they're going to pick and what they're going to play? Or do you think people really just naively didn't do it? What do you think, Loco?
So they looked at how G2 played and they're like, these guys are fucking trolls. They play Jhin, they play Heimer, like, and all they do is split push. Like, let them have these troll ass shit. Like, we'll just smash them anyways. I think that was like the viewpoint for Afrika whenever they left it up versus G2, where they felt like, oh, these guys are trying to play carries in this like tank meta. Like, oh my god, they're so stupid. We're gonna fucking wreck them top lane. We're gonna pick Sion, and we're gonna like the Camille won't work versus us. We're gonna let them have Heimer. Heimer's a troll ass pick. What is this? Early 2018, like. Non-ADC bot lane doesn't work, and then they got smashed. So I think it was Afrika looking at them really, really lightly and getting punished for it.
Okay, what do you think? Kelsey, this must have been later on in the group when they played G2, must have been a game after your own heart, right?
Later on in the game after, you mean Afrika when they played? Of course, side lanes.
G2 played yes.
Yes, of course. The second game against Flash Wolves, not so much. I think that there were some interesting lane assignments there, but I don't think anyone cared what a side lane was in that game. But the game that G2 played against Flash Wolves was interesting. I do think that Flash Wolves tunneled themselves and Afrika tunneled themselves into kind of positions where they couldn't match the side lane pressure anyway. So it was like really kind of a non-starter, and everyone was saying, yeah, but if they just hold out, they outscale. Okay, guys, you can't match them in any lane. How do they outscale? Like, ever? It was just a fucking weird situation. So yeah.
So I want to kind of touch on that, like the outscaling part. How people view it is, if you have a team fight comp, like let's say you have stuff like Jinx, Kog'Maw, or like a hyper carry and a very like strong control mage like Orianna, you're like, oh, we outscale them because at 4 and 5 items, whenever we team fight 5v5, we're gonna win. But what happens is, even if you have the stronger team fight comp and you outscale that way, teams can choose to not take team fights on you, and they can just constantly play 1-3-1 and put you in situations where you aren't fighting 5v5, and that outscaling team fight comp doesn't actually get to outscale, and the win condition of split pushing becomes much stronger because you can't force them out of constantly being in the 1-3-1 situation. It's something like people have wrong a lot of times. Like, just play safe. We're gonna outscale them. Like, it honestly doesn't work that way. Like, outscaling, it matters when you guys are both team fight versus team fight comp, and that's your only win condition. then yeah, outscaling does matter. Like whoever's stronger later in the team fight is going to win. But when you have opposing win condition, be it split push, be it poke, it doesn't matter if you are the outscaling team fight team, the other team can just choose to not play to that. I think it's a really big misconception. Like I see it all the time. Like, oh my God, why did they start fighting? They have an outscaling team fight comp. It's like, no, dude, it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
Also, I want to ask, like, I guess both you and Thorin about G2's playstyle a little. So from how I understand it, their team style can be determined in this. They love split pushing. They love 1-3-1. That's what I saw of them from the tournament. And their AD carry is bad at playing traditional ADCs like Kai'Sa and Xayah. His Kai'Sa, with his traditional ADC carry play in the play-ins did not look that great. And during the group stage, he only played, I think, Jhin, Heimer, and Brand, right? If I'm correct. Yeah. Where he's only playing these like mage type.
I think he also played Sivir, but Sivir is, he plays Sivir in kind of a unique way. So yeah, it works for him.
Well, I mean, when Loco says traditional there, he obviously means like in the sense of like an actual AD carry. Obviously, like Kai'Sa is a fairly new champion and pretty much a hyper carry. But what would you say to this then, Kelsey?
I think that he actually, like, this is AD carry pick-wise. This is not the worst meta ever for him because he can kind of make Jhin work. Sivir is fine. And then, so he has like some picks that work. So for me, Hjarnan is less of an issue than Wadid because he has at least 3, right? He can bring out the Heimer, he can bring out all the shit. So he's kind of fine as long as he can clear. And then he's actually pretty smart about when he wants to, what lane needs to get priority first. And he just rotates to that lane. So he's pretty fine in that sense, but I wouldn't say that he's a very good, like, you aren't thinking, okay, you aren't going to build a team comp around Hjarnan where everyone just plays Shen and tanks and front lines. He's not UZI, he's Hjarnan. He's not going to carry you in that sense. So.
No, the thing I'd say to that angle is, like, first of all, one thing I actually am kind of with Sven from TSM on when he said this on stream and Twitter, except he went too far the other way, is that, like, definitely people went too far in playing like Hjarnan is a shit player. He clearly is not at any point in time a shit AD carry player. Like, he might be like, here's the real problem he has in G2 is I would say he's like a middle of the pack ULCS AD carry. Like, he does his job fairly well. He's basically what people actually, if they were being really harsh on Reckless at times in his career, would say Reckless is like, just play the laning phase well, do a pretty decent job, don't get too far behind, play the few heroes that champions and League of Legends that you have available to you. Depending on who your laning support is, that will determine if you can do any more than that. So in the past, when he had someone like Kasing in H2K, we can do a lot with a player like that. If nowadays you have Wadid, who, as we say, have some issues, and the champions he's going to have to pick anyway aren't based around smash and lane, then you're probably not going to be doing super dominant there. But the problem is, one, if you play and you're replacing Sven and Mithy, you are never going to get away with being that type of player and have people not contrast you against the player before you who was considered one of the best AD carries. So that already makes you look bad in comparison. Secondly, you play for G2, a team that's got championship aspirations. So again, if you're, of all the players in the team, not one of the strongest, you're going to come up looking weak. And everyone else in the team obviously has either been a star player or is still very strong individually. And so those factors tend to make him look worse than he is. Like, I've never thought he was a bad player, quite frankly. I just didn't always like it when he was on some of the better teams and he maybe got overhyped a little bit, because in the past it would usually be like you'd expect, something would be in meta that he played and he would just do a good job playing it, and then people might from that accidentally overrate you. The point is, when you tie this into the overall thing of G2, it's not really a surprise G2 wants to play around the solo lanes and wants to play split push and play side lanes, because clearly they've had their issues making like the global aspect of the game work with their bot lane, because they've got limited picks for a start off. And if you've got a player as strong as One Day in the top lane, and obviously Perks is always going to be a strength, why not play to them? I mean, as we saw in some of these games here, even at Worlds, some teams don't actually know how to play in response when you do this.
I think League of Legends pro teams and just analysis in general has a bias towards AD carry centric compositions. People who play tank in the top lane, people say that it's way easier to execute, way more reliable. So people always want the kinds of AD carries that are super flashy, but like you end up getting a lot of top laners who get super free passes because they can't necessarily play a carry role. And people say how good Impact is, et cetera, and like, oh my God, you saw him play those 2 carry champions that one time. But imagine, like, Hjarnan is basically Impact for G2, I would say. He's basically Impact, and Wonder is double lift. Like, that's kind of how you go. Yeah.
Can I touch a little bit on why I think traditionally heavy AD carry teams were more favored and carry top laners were kind of shunned? So,
yes, go ahead.
Thank you for permission, Father Thorin. So, whenever with like traditional AD carry comps, if you reach a certain point in the game and the other team hasn't demolished you enough, your team comp is gonna win. Like comps with Jinx, comps with Kog'Maw, comps with Sivir, comps with Tristana. Once you hit a certain point and you have like supported cast around the AD carry, it's the strongest way to play. So if the game started at 40 minutes with full items, everyone would be playing that kind of comp. But what happened recently is people took away wards from junglers. You can no longer build Green Smite on junglers. And also, everyone got better about coordinating plays and snowballing their lead and prioritizing Dragon less and hitting certain benchmarks on top laners. Like most notably, 2 items on Irelia, 2 items on Camille. Like these start giving you like extreme split pushing power and extreme guide potential along with the jungler or just by yourself. So in the past, Korea kind of realized this, and traditional Korean teams had powerhouse tops. So like SKT with Marin, that during that day, like they really knew how to prioritize top lane and really snowball off that, where China and rest of NA and rest of the world still preferred these bottom-centric comps. But with the changes I mentioned, with the wars being taken away from jungle and there being a lot more randomness, teams aren't able to get to that state where AD carries are stronger, and the early tempo and the early power spikes of top lanes are happening much more, and there's a lot more random and a lot more skirmish things that are happening that are preventing the more slower comps from being able to get to that state. So the game's dramatically shifting in a way like it hasn't been, where top lane oriented, tempo-based, split-based, 1-3-1 is much more favored. And I think we saw that a lot in this tournament with Gen.G being knocked out early because they are that slow ADC carry team, and they got smacked by C9 and Vitality that love that high tempo, 1-3-1 constant fight style. And G2 is also a team that's seeing a lot of success because of that. So yeah, like I think like League is changing a lot, and yeah, I mean, League is really changing a lot, like from what it has been traditionally. One thing I did want to ask, so I was looking up stats for Hjarnan and Wadid, and one of the soft stat that GG Esports has is consistency. And from 1 out of 20, Wadid has 1 score. Can I ask about that? Does that like accurately reflect how Wadid is as a player? Like,
I'm not sure what that score would entail, but if
just means it's the worst possible rating for consistency, basically.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that's calculated, but if I think of like Wadid is consistent in the sense that if he has Tom Kench, he'll do well. If he doesn't, he won't. Okay. I don't know. That's how I would describe it. So no, I guess if you think of consistent as consistently good, then probably 1 is harsh, but I don't know what else to tell you.
What about this then? In that scenario, like, should people, when they look to this quarterfinal, will G2 literally prioritize it to the extent that if it isn't in the first bans, they will first pick the Tahm Kench?
I think they might, because I know that LPL teams have a tendency to actually ban the Tahm Kench as well. So if it meant just naturally and randomly without having anyone that they necessarily think is an insane Tahm Kench player. So I think they might actually just go for the Tahm Kench first pick. They were prioritizing other stuff over it, and if they can get Heimer out of it as well, they probably won't first pick Tahm Kench, because if they can at least get Heimer or something, then they don't care as much. So, but yeah, I think it would be smart of them to, well, maybe not first pick it, but to kind of ensure that at least they aren't trading for it. Because I can't imagine that if they're on blue side and then the enemy team is on red, I can't imagine the red side team would prioritize Tahm Kench so much that they would first rotate it if there was a bunch of other stuff up. So it really depends on the situation. But there are like some scenarios where they might first pick it. So.
Okay. Right, Loco, for G2 generally, do you have like some stats you can give us from their site where we can get some sort of sense? Like, for example, if they're going to be very strong around the solo lanes, maybe you can give us some info on what Wonder's stats look like, etc.
Sure. So one thing that's super fucking interesting about Wonder is he's their key player that we talked about, right? Like he is their core player, but he has very low kill participation while still being like, he has the highest carry percentage for the team. So it means when Wonder wins, he's not participating a lot. He's generally not participating in a lot of the G2's kills, but he is still the primary carry. So the only way that stat can be explained is he split pushes all day long. And I think from what I saw in group stage, like it was that, like this guy was a crazy split pusher on Camille. He was running Camille with Kleptomancy and hitting the 2-item power strike extremely quickly and just going and never ever joining team fights. It was really interesting to see. It reminded me a lot of like season 2, where top laners would run stuff like Irelia and Jax with Ignite, and they would never group with the team, and they would just split push till the very end of the game. And that was kind of the style he was playing, where he's picking a bruiser and just split pushing till the very fucking end of the game. So yeah, really interesting to see.
I think he tweeted right after that first Afrika game, says, "I'd really like to play some team fights next time, guys." So yeah, like they're very self-aware that he's going to do this kind of thing. Like they put a lot of gold on him just so that like you're in positions where you're forcing the enemy team to make a trade between defending their base or going for an objective that you're trying to contest. And it works for them fairly well. I would say that since Afrika and to an extent Fangbu could both sort of play that style, they couldn't go as far with it as they could have maybe otherwise, but it works for them pretty well, yeah.
Okay. Right, if we start to bring some of these like stylistic and play style tendencies that we've addressed here into the actual prediction of the matchup, like how are RNG and G2 are going to match up. How about this, Kelsey? So to start with, this angle of like G2's strength, or at least what it has been thus far, are they going to be able to have a strength in the top lane with Wonder? Are they going to be able to play a side lane style approach against RNG? Because for people who don't know, when we've talked about RNG on past shows of Narrative Wake, and we've discussed the player Let Me as a top laner, he is someone who actually has basically built his career on being amazing at absorbing pressure and actually being able to go head to head even with the likes of Khan and other such big name players. Now at the same time, if you saw Cloud9's games against RNG, Licorice was having some pretty good games at some point in time in this group and seemingly had some success. So how do you think that aspect of the matchup can work for G2? Like, is there an opening there? Is there some point of attack?
So I actually like RNG best. It's weird because I actually like RNG best when they're playing 131. They don't do it as much anymore, but that used to be like my favorite way that they would play, because I think that they would handle side lanes really, really well. I don't think that's been expressed in this tournament very much, except for a couple of games where Let Me played Aatrox. And he even didn't do that well. They even didn't do that well against Genji when they had like an opening for Rise to have pressure in the bot side of the map. They screwed up some of their execution there. So I do think that there is an opening there. And I think that if I had to take the two EU teams left over and put them against RNG, I would say that if you just looked at the style that the teams play and removed the nameplates, like G2 should have a better chance against RNG than Fnatic. But if you don't remove the nameplates, you have to really deal with kind of the bottom lane issue. And I think that becomes a really big problem.
Okay. So Loco, on the other side of the equation then, give me your thoughts here, because as she alluded to there, it doesn't even matter necessarily if you get an advantage in the top lane if your bottom lane is going to have problems against Uzi and Ming, right?
Yeah, so what we talked about, so Hjarnan actually has 100% win rate on Heimer. I'm not sure if it's out of last 40 games or if it's just straight. Like he has never lost a game on Heimer. Like
I don't think he's ever lost ever.
He's never lost a game on Heimer, no. Not at Rift Rivals, not in Europe, not at Worlds.
Like the joke is, Loco, he actually already did legit practice that particular champion and like it before that crazy meta came in when he could play it. So he just got super lucky, believe it or not.
Oh wow. Okay, so this guy has 100% win rate on Heimer, and as Kelsey talked about, Wadid is super dependent on Tahm Kench. So I want to talk a little bit about RNG coaching staff. So their coaching staff is Hart and Kesman. Hart is the support player from Samsung Blue. He's been in China playing a little, and then he turned to coach. And then Ketzman used to be the assistant coach on CJ, and he used to be the head coach for Blaze. So these two coaches are very like they've been coaching and been in the esports scene for about 5 years now, and they do their research pretty well. So I think they're gonna ban Kensheimer, and once they ban Kensheimer, I think G2's bot lane has no shot against RNG. So if G2 is smart, they should be practicing other stuff. But if he's forced off of Heimer and he's playing stuff like Jhin or Sivir or Brand, where it is still somewhat skill dependent, and it's not just about constantly, endlessly shoving lane with Heimer, then yeah, I think they're gonna get fucking wrecked by RNG bot lane in real matchups.
Okay, and what are your thoughts on that part, Kelsey?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment to make. You definitely don't I would say that the weirdest thing about Hjarnan and Wanted isn't even necessarily that they're bad. It's the way that they're approaching the bot lane. Sometimes they just kind of walk forward on the wave before the waves even meet. So they're opening themselves up to harass unnecessarily all the time. And I don't know if they're doing that to try to get vision, try to pull the enemy wave or something like this, but they do it a lot, and it always puts them kind of on the back foot early on, or when they're first coming back to lane, and I don't know what is going on in that thought process. So
okay,
it's a way to get priority. If you stand in front of your wave and you hit the other wave before it meets, it gives you priority, and you only do it when you have a lot of advantage in the lane, where if the other team walks up to you, you can punish them. But it seems like they're just doing it purely for the sake of priority, and they are getting punished for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about this then?
Well.
So Loco, give us some stats for RNG then. For example, maybe some bot lane stats, if that's going to be a massive edge for them.
Sure. Let's go to RNG. I mean, for one thing I noticed about watching RNG is I personally thought RNG was a very I thought they'd be a very Uzi one-man team. I was completely wrong. I thought how they played actually wasn't just totally dependent on Uzi. They're actually pretty well-rounded.
Here's what's nuts, Loco. People don't know this detail. The RNG team actually won the Demacia Cup without even using Uzi. They used their backup AD carry, who's also a pretty good player actually, a guy called Abel, and they won the entire Demacia Cup without even using Uzi. So they're a pretty fucking good team generally, and they have a lot of good players on their squad.
Okay, wow. I'm gonna give you some insane Uzi stats. So average 10 game, 15-minute CS is 145. So I thought, it's just out of average 10 games. Maybe if I up the number of games, his 15-minute CS is going to go down. Average 25 minutes, or average 15-minute CS, 25 games is 142. Out of 40 games, it's 145. His average 15-minute CS being 145 in 40 games is it's fucking crazy. Holy fucking shit. That's... I know stats are sometimes hard for people to grasp.
Sure.
Averaging 145 CS in 15 minutes, 150 CS in 15 minutes would be considered extremely good in pro play. If you're getting 150 CS at 15 minutes, I'd be like, this AD had an extremely good laning phase. He's averaging 145. That is, that's fucking crazy. Holy fuck.
Kelsey, how do you think how is someone able to do that when they are also literally the poster boy of their team? So people know that you're going to play this style. I mean, famously, Uzi, people always contrast him with Forgiven in the sense that they try to contest all the CS all the time, and they put a lot of aggressive play onto the enemy. How is this not so telegraphed that you can just gank the bot lane all the time in that sense?
There are a couple of things that RNG does, and one is that it's actually more important to them in the super early game to get a lead on mid lane than it is to get a lead on bot lane. And part of that is that if Xiaohu always has good priority in the mid lane, then if something happens top lane, because usually teams respond by trading for top side, and a lot of the really good Korean teams do, then Xiaohu can take TP and he can TP top and defend, and the wave will still be pushed so that it will bounce back mid, and then Uzi and Ming can push out back, rotate mid, take the wave mid, and then go back. They do this kind of shit all the time to get just little tricks on the map like that, just to make sure that Uzi is kind of getting more than his share.
So it actually
of CS.
fucks you more if you try to gank him.
Yeah, so...
That's pretty good, I can't lie.
So that's like they do a lot of things like that. Also, UZI is a very kind of aggressive guy, and he will say that like he'll prioritize denying enemy CS over his CS. So he just wants to make sure he gets to the point where he can basically farm for free. And then famously in China, a lot of junglers are willing to kind of give up more camps early on to their AD carries, and so RNG is another team that does that a lot. So.
I saw he said in an interview that that's like one of the secrets to getting a good CS is you just go and take jungle camps, which people think that's like a troll answer. He's actually being serious.
Which camps does he take? Like double golems and like Gromp?
Yeah, double golems or Gromp, or usually not super early on in the game, but like after first tower goes down or something like this. So.
Okay, holy shit. Double golems is super important for jungle because of how the XP works. It's the most efficient camp for jungle to take. Like AD taking double golems from jungler is like telling the jungler like go fuck yourself. Like because for AD carry, like it's not that much CS, but because how jungle works, you get additional XP for killing like little dudes. Like killing double golem camps is super important for jungle. So like. Yeah, this team, in a lot of ways, I guess, like secretly sacrifices for UZI, giving up double camps or like the AD carry being allowed to go mid lane and take camps or take CS. Like if that happened on an NA team where the AD carry went mid lane and took CS from the mid laner, that was like the mid laner could have potentially gotten. Like the mid laner would be furious. Like holy fuck, like they'd be pissed off.
Well, the good thing is, like, first of all, like, shout out to UZI for already getting to the status of, like, Season 2 EU mids, where it's like, jungler, just give me everything. It's all for me. Your job is just to be alive. And then secondly, that is actually also, funnily enough, one of the complaints that certain teammates have forgiven had is that he actually used to just do that, basically. Like, if like, there was a big wave building up in the middle, he was like, yeah, you go bottom lane, Fox, I'm going mid, mate. It's like, that's all my CS. Like, nah, your CS is in the bottom lane now, so... So it's the responsibility to take on your shoulders. What about this then? So Loco, give me you were building into a story then. We like sidetracked you a bit. So you were saying that you thought it was going to be like a one-man show, UZI focused, etc. In light of the fact you've now seen like the team has more to it. It's not just only playing like raise the poppy / protect the double lift style. What are your anticipations for this series? Do you think G2 has any chance?
I know
I'm guessing coming into the tournament, right, you didn't have high expectations for G2.
Yeah. I think G2 is actually really one-dimensional in a lot of ways. Like they've only shown me one style, 1-3-1 with push, and they're very dependent on certain picks. I would say they're probably the most pick-dependent team in the entire tournament. I think they're super, super dependent on Camille, Heimer, and Kench, and any kind of when they don't have those three champions, how they look compared to when they do have those three champions, it's just worlds apart. And it's a best of 5 series. So even if RNG is like stupid enough where they're like, you know, we can just probably beat them without banning those champions, and they let them have it and they lose the first few games, like it's a best of 5. Like they are gonna fucking like shut that shit down. I think from game 1, if they are smart enough and they do ban out those champions, I think RNG has like 100% shot to win this. Like G2 have like almost no chance. So let me give you the odds for GG Esports. So they have it at, if RNG wins, you'll get 1.01 back. So if you bet $1, you'll get $1. Well, if you bet 100 coins, you'll get 101 coins back for betting on this. If you bet on RNG. And then for G2 on the other,
I'm assuming.
Yeah. G2 on the other hand, if you bet 100 coins, you'll get 720 coins back if they win. So 7.2 odds for G2 if they win. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna agree. Like for straight win, like not 3-1, not 3-0, just who's gonna win, I do think the odds are insurmountably in RNG's favor in terms of play style, in terms of champion picks, in terms of how good the individual players are. The only thing G2 is better, and the only thing that gives them a shot is if they get all 3 of the core picks we just talked about.
Yeah. What about this, Kelsey? So
Yeah.
I know, for example, since they have Korean coaching staff on this team, I wanted to get your take on how you think RNG approaches like the draft part of the matchup here, because I know like the Reddit analyst goes, well, Loco, you're right, you just ban those 3 champions and then you don't have to worry. But if anything, like from history, you would expect, first of all, Korean coaches, their approach. I always thought people went too far, thinking they were like being BM by letting all the picks come through early on. My logic for that was always they actually wanted to see what you would do with your picks, basically, and it wasn't the end of the world anyway. And then if you notice, what they would do is, I always thought the reason that top Korean teams let you have a bunch of your picks early on in a series is because they don't want to have to ban all of them. They want to know like which one should I ban that then just crushes your whole team anyway, and let you have the other ones, because obviously the ideal scenario if you're the best team is take away like the one essential pick and then still have all your power picks, whereas obviously you're going to give up, like there's no point banning the other team's 3 best picks if you just give all the global power picks as well to them. I'm sure in that scenario many teams would also win. So what do you think would be the RNG approach in this series? Like, do they just ban early on and just get them all out of there? Do they take like a slow approach to it? What would your guess be?
So I don't think Camille is as important, because I think there are more picks that Rng can play that he can get like good pressure on. Like a lot of picks like that are popular right now. Kind of, he can, or not Rng, Wonder.
Wonder.
There we go.
Yeah, Wonder. Yeah, the Danish top laner. Good stuff. He can play like Top Rise, for example, or he can play Aurelia. He can play a bunch of stuff that can get split push pressure, and he won't shy away from that kind of thing. So
I want to touch on what makes Camille so special. Is Camille's the one champion where she can stare you in the face and take turrets on you. Other champions, when you're a tank, like they can't take turrets on you until they killed you. But Camille, due to how her protocol Q plus Sheen works, can do like 500, 400 chunks of damage on turret every time with the second rotation of Q. So I think Camille is really, really special in that sense, and I think she's the best split pusher in the tournament. I agree with you, like Ryze and Aurelia can get priority, but Camille can do disgusting things like at turret that other champions can't.
I agree, but that also means that it's like less important to G2 than the bot lane picks, I think, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's basically the point that I'm coming through. I can imagine, because RNG already said in the LMS sort of broadcast interview that they left Zillion open for C9 on purpose and stuff, and they wanted to see what C9 did with that and how to play against it. So I can imagine the first game they leave Heimer up, or they leave Heimer and Tom Kench up, or something like this. I don't think it would be that weird. And there are some creative things that people have tried to do against Heimer, like Mordecai. Flash was trying to do Mordekaiser, but the rest of their draft was just a complete non-starter. So,
can I ask, why the fuck would RNG do that? Like, this is Worlds. This is not like a fucking, hey, like it's the regular season and we're gonna let you have some of the picks to see what you do with it, so we can prep versus you in playoffs. Like RNG, when they play C9, they like the only time they can meet C9 would be in semis. So why the fuck would you do that? Like if the only time you can meet the
finals, actually.
Oh, it's finals? Okay.
Yeah,
so the only time you can meet the team is finals. After groups, then why the fuck would you let them have their picks? Just think, let's see if we can play against the Jillian. We're prepping for the finals.
Because they also saw Jack's interview and they knew that this is going to be the best ever Worlds for NA, so they were waiting to meet them in the final. You don't just give away all your players now, Loco. You got to prepare for the best team.
Okay.
But
Come on, Kelsey.
Okay. I think, why the fuck would they do that? I'm so lost.
That pick was also useful against Vitality and also Gen G, I think. I'm not sure, but it has been useful against other teams, so they probably wanted to kind of see how it felt to play against it, to see if it was like worth looking into. I have no idea.
I don't know if you're aware of this. Anyone who's Chinese or Korean, here's like a pro tip for future Worlds. Just contact these teams and just say like, can we have a scrim against you, please? And then just pick that, just let them have that champion. Like they'll do it. They want to play you, believe it or not. I don't know if you're aware of this, guys.
No, I think it's funny because when I first saw that, I was like, yeah, sure you did, like that kind of thing. It's like we did this on purpose. We weren't being over cocky. We weren't assuming that we could just take care of it. But Yeah, so I was slightly suspicious of it for the reasons that you've said, but I don't know. Maybe they thought that they could get something out of playing against it on stage, because a lot of teams say picks work differently on stage than in scrims and stuff like this. So
since GG Esports doesn't have these odds, I want to ask you, what are the odds that the RNG team allows G2 to get Heimer or Kench?
I reckon it happens at least one or two games. Especially, I reckon at least 1 or 2 games. Come on.
I honestly think it will happen.
The Heimer one surely happens at least once, Kelsey.
Really?
Like, everyone's going to think that it's a waste of a pick.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think it'll happen at least one game. Maybe they prove me wrong, but I honestly think that they'll let Heimer probably both through at least once.
Okay.
Honestly.
As a coach, it fucking baffles me because, right? So I'm preparing versus G2. So I look at like the current power picks that I really need to think about. I need to really think about All-Star. I really need to think about Urgot. I really need to think about Aatrox. Okay, I don't mind giving them Urgot or All-Star because it doesn't really play that well to their playstyle, especially Urgot since G2 on a split push. So I probably should ban Aatrox if I'm purple side to make sure they don't get Aatrox, but they won't worry about Urgot. So now I have 2 free bans that I can use on Heimer and Kench. What could be more of like needed to ban over like Heimer and Kench that RNG would let G2 have their core champions that they need to win?
Kali? I don't know.
What the hell?
Yeah. I actually do think mid lane will matter a lot because I think that it can shut down the way that RNG want to set up their map later on, because they rely a lot on Xiaohu being able to get pressure in a side lane. But I don't think it's so much a ban thing, is that they'll probably have some idea of something they can play against. They've been playing against Fnatic and they've been crushing Fnatic at other championships. Fnatic is the champion team, so they probably aren't thinking so much that G2 are extra intimidating. They obviously completely changed the way that they approach their game after losing 2 games to Vitality and Cloud9 in group stage. We saw their picks and bans change drastically, so they don't have a hard time adapting their draft on the fly. They have a jungler they can switch out for a reason, because if to completely change the mood, because allegedly, MLXG can be like giga toxic and just go next. So they have Karsa around to refresh the mood, or if they need someone to really keep people focused or to take blame or something, they can put MLXG back in as well. Also, MLXG is kind of like, he's not the smartest guy, but if you need someone who just like will not choke, and will be the same in a high pressure game or in a regular game, then you want MLXG. So I think that they have a lot of tools for righting a situation if the first game goes really bad. But so they probably will think it's fine to let it through one game.
Okay, so in terms of predictions, I'll give you guys 3 things that you guys can predict on, and then let me know which one, so to help me, I guess, earn some coins. So for G2 in game 1, between First Blood, First Turret, and First Dragon, which one do you think is the most likely?
For G2, First Dragon, First Turret.
This is game 1, did you say? It's got to be First Turret, surely, if they get Heimer, I guess. So there we go.
Okay, so Thorin, you're on a Heimer, I think, or you're on First Turret?
Yeah, let's go.
What about you, Kelsey?
They're not getting any fucking dragons. I don't know why that's even an option we're allowed to pick.
I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to imagine a scenario where they would get the dragon. So turrets. I'll say First Blood, because I feel like there's a chance that like Jankos makes it to topside first and they get a kill on Let Me or something. So
okay. So I'll give you guys the odds for it. So it's actually First Turret is the least or First Turret is the least likely, Thorin, because if you bet 10 coins, you'll get 59 coins back if you bet on First Turret. For First Blood, if you bet 10 coins, you'll get 47 back. So yeah, they think First Turret is extremely, extremely unlikely, but maybe, yeah, if they do get Heimer, it does happen.
Does G2 do any sort of like creative level 1s or any like risky stuff early on in that sense, Kelsey?
Oh yeah, for sure. They will do, especially when they're playing, I think less so now, but especially when they were playing Funnel, they really understood that you kind of need to punish the enemy jungler at the beginning to make sure your funnel can scale effectively. So they would often go in and try to deny the enemy red buff or catch the jungler at his first camp. So they will definitely do that stuff, and they do know how to do that stuff. So it's not that unlikely that they would do some kind of first blood tactic. Yeah.
Okay. And since you touched on it briefly there in terms of like the atmosphere element of the jungle swap out, but obviously that is a factor that RNG has in their pocket, is that they can switch out the jungler, whereas G2 is playing with the players that they're playing with. Now, we didn't see MLXG until the end of the group, basically, until they'd lost a few games. They were playing Carcer the whole time. Is that assumed to be the way they will play it? That, as you said, maybe MLXG comes in if they feel like Carcer's tilted or something like that? Is there actually a stylistic difference that we should expect if we see one or the other?
I think that MLXG is way less controlled and predictable. Like sometimes I don't really like the way that MLXG jungles, because I can almost always think of a path that's more efficient or something that he should be doing instead. But because of that, in a way, he kind of goes for low percentage plays that really shake up the enemy team, and that can set him really, really far behind. But at the same time, it can work really, really well for him. So that would be the main difference that I would see. I think Karsa has a really good understanding of, okay, my bot lane just picked Tristan or Rakan. They're probably going to be down like 30 CS if they were normal by, I don't know, 6 minutes or something stupid, because that lane is garbage. So I need to make something happen so that doesn't happen to them really, really early on. And he'll path correctly. He'll adjust what his game plan is, just to make up for issues in the draft or issues with the way his team composition is set up. So,
okay. What about let me ask you this then, Loco. So we didn't the one part we didn't touch on much. Kelsey alluded to it earlier about the impact it could have is the mid lane. What do you think of Perks and Xiaohu, Loco?
Xiaohu's better than I initially thought. Like, and I know Perks is good, but I don't think like mid lane it's gonna be like won or lost really. I think it's both play pretty much all champs. Both are pretty solid. Like, I feel like mid is actually the most boring part of the map for both games, because both teams have very special bot lanes. Like, one is the best bot lane at Worlds, and one is the most pick dependent bot lane at Worlds. And for top lane, one of the top laners is the most split pusher top lane in the world, and one of the top laners is the most the poorest and like the most like beggar top lane in the world. Like, let me guess, nothing. He gets all the blame. He gets none of the ganks. All he has to do is play tank. So yeah, I think mid lane's actually super fucking boring in this.
Yeah, a lot of people don't actually know that his full alias used to be "Let me please play League of Legends," but they just shortened it to "Let me" because Chinese like to do that a lot, you know. So shout out there to Dyrus there, little shout out from 3 years later at the World Championship, because now all beefs have actually been resolved. Loco, I actually did an interview with him and everything. You know, everything's
really?
cool now. Yeah, everything's cool. Thing is, I'm starting to feel Loco. Like, you know, I've noticed, so ever since you left TSM, everything's cool with you, you know, Reginald, you know, we had some things going on, got things sorted with him. I've even had Amazing on someone in Insight. I've had an interview with Dyrus. The other day I had Wild Turtle in my DMs telling me he used to love my work. I feel as though you were actually the one person within TSM who poisoned them against me, Loco. Like, when you got there, I think about it logically, as soon as you were gone, all of a sudden they had room in their heart for Thorin again. They were like, you know what, he was an okay guy. Maybe we misjudged him, you know.
Unless I purposely told you to make that Caesar joke, what is it? It could have not been me. Unless I purposely told you, like, unless I purposely brainwashed you to make that Lucian is retarded, so is Wild Turtle joke, it can't be my fault. Those were of your own fault. I don't care.
I prefer the narrative where Locodoco actually a 14-year-old mean girl, so he just talks mad shit behind your back.
Exactly. And then he comes along and he's like, oh, the other girls are talking so much shit about, you know, but we can be secret best buds though, like if you do everything I tell you. It's like, I understand now. Okay.
Yeah. To Andy, I was like, Andy, don't start trying to make Summoning Insight happen. Summoning Insight is so not going to happen.
Exactly,
okay? And then Andy's like, yes, Summoning Insight is so not happening. I'm like, yes, so not happening, totally. And Andy's like, yes, totally. And then That's what happened. We're like, no, summoning insight, tacky AF. No, not for us, y'all.
And then you painted each other's nails. It was good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That part might have actually happened.
We're painting each other's nails while looking at the group draws.
Yes, exactly. Well, to be fair, they did actually start jumping around on that couch like fucking Tom Cruise on Oprah or something when they were getting that pick, weren't they?
Group C, yes.
Yeah. That was outrageous, wasn't it? To be fair, though, every coach and owner should react to groups like that. Like, I'd love to see that video for everyone, because obviously there's be so many times when people are loving it. Right, what about this then? So I think we pretty much covered most of it in this episode. Is there like let's do it this way. Since one thing I liked when we did the predictions for the groups was that whole like upset angle, because I think it's a pretty good way to do analysis at the end. So we've done like the legit face-up analysis of like, here are the two teams, here's how they're favoured. But Kelsey, what type of scenario would have to happen for G2 to pull an upset? Now, an upset might not mean even win the series, because they are obviously like a massive underdog. We've discussed a number of factors that actually, if anything, make it even less likely, like the way people didn't punish them in the group stage and draft. What would allow G2 to make this a closer series? Is there a player that would have to play better? Would they have to do something different stylistically? Is there a world in which RNG just lets them do the things they want to do? What would you say would be the setup for like an interesting series?
I think that the first thing is absolutely make sure you don't allow Nocturne through, because if you want to play split push and RNG have Nocturne, it's not going to be a fun time for you for the most part. The other thing is probably play hard through mid, because I think people really, really underrate how important having a strong mid matchup is for RNG. And I think that Perks is a good mid laner. He's actually like a really strong mid laner. Obviously, he's taken a bit of a backseat to Caps since he's come up, but he's still a very strong mid laner from Europe. And the one game kind of when RNG or G2 were able to beat RNG last year, it was when they were able to get mid prio and transfer that to bot lane at the World Championship when they were in the group together. So I think that they can still apply a similar formula. But just make sure your bottom lane is basically hiding under turret for their life, and that's your best chance right there. There you go.
Kelsey, what's your final prediction in terms of score line?
I think I wouldn't be surprised to see 3-1, because I definitely feel like RNG for sure will leave Heimer open.
No soft bullshit. No soft bullshit of I wouldn't be surprised if it was this. What is your prediction? Like,
I for sure think that they will leave Heimer open one game, and it will be a 3-1. So that is my prediction. There you go.
Yeah. Right. You have to understand, Kelsey doesn't use turns of phrase. She literally wouldn't be surprised if they did that. Like, she wasn't just saying that to hedge the bets on that one. She would have just said 3-0 Loco, don't worry. Let me think. See, here's the thing. You know what? I'm from Europe, Loco, so I can do this. No one from NA can do this, okay? Now you all understand about how certain groups can't say certain things. I just say, fuck G2. G2's going to get banged out 3-0. They win no games. You know what? I'll even say, even if they get fucking Heimerdinger, they still lose anyway, because if anything, I could also see RNG being like cocky enough to think like, let's see if this works, and then just do it anyway and win. So I'll say RNG 3-0.
Oh,
death to Europe.
3-1 or 0.
The thing is, I'm allowed to say that also because I did ride so hard for Fnatic on the other side of the bracket, which I'm fucking loving that bracket draw, by the way, that I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm putting all my spirit energy into the Spirit Bomb of Fnatic on the other side. So, sorry, G2, I've got nothing left for you, mate. Got nothing left for you. No tears. 2 tears in a fucking bucket on this one. So, what about you, Loco? What are you taking?
It's 3-1 or 3-0, and I'm thinking, is the cockiness of RNG enough to deliver them a game 1 loss? That's the only thing I can really think of. I think that's the only game they can lose.
It's even more hype if they are the first. Like, imagine RNG getting super excited and thinking, we'll be the first team to beat the Heimerdinger, We'll trash them so hard.
They have the record of, we can win every single tournament we participated this year. Or we can be the first person to beat Heimer or Yarnan's Heimer. Win every tournament played this year? Or the first person to beat
I don't know.
Which one's more important?
Which would you rather have, Loco? I think Kjarnin's Heimer is pretty big.
Exactly. You don't realise, Loco, you're saying that in a way that's totally reasonable. Like, if I was doing, like, the old scales thing, you know, the scales would be heavily on the side of, like, win the tournament, right? But I do imagine that, especially for certain Chinese teams I've seen, that the idea of letting that Heimer pick through is like the fucking laser pointer to the cat. It's like, I must have it. I must get... It's like, you know there's nothing there. There's not... What's the point in even going for it? But I feel like the temptation is too high.
It's like that.
I feel like I'm predicting them to be stupid. Like, oh my god, I should text. I'm gonna go for 3-0, and I'm gonna text Kesman, please ban Heimer and Kench. I think I'm going with the 3-0, but I also get to text Kesman, please ban Heimer and Kench. So yeah, I think the best there has. Okay, 3-0 for me.
Like the dream now, obviously. Yeah.
The gif of the little girl that people use on Twitter is just like, why not both?
Yes, exactly.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
See, the genius now.
Heimer and win Worlds.
Yeah, Loco hasn't thought it through. The genius move here is he picks 3-0 because they do this, and they do 3-0, but they actually do let through Heimerdinger, and then they're just like, see, I had to just tell Loco Donson that actually we can handle this. We don't need your coaching. Thank you. That would be the most baller way for it to end.
God,
they do both.
But there's so many times where players do that, where it's like, hey, I think we should ban this, and I think it's bad because of this and this reasons, and they're like, no, we can beat it, and then we'll like against better judgment, and I'll let the players pick it, and then after game they'll come up to me and be like, see, I told you we could beat it. It's like, just because you survived the car accident without having your seatbelt on doesn't mean you should not have your seatbelt on at all times. Like,
it's such a good analogy.
Like, put the fucking seatbelt on. Like, the danger of like letting them have Heimer and Kench is not worth like the comfort of not having your seatbelt on. Like, please don't be dumb, please, RNG, don't be dumb. I'm betting 3-0 on you. I got a lot of coins. I need to win some gems. I want some RP. Please, 3-0. Oh my god. All right. Anything else, Thorin?
I think that's it, isn't it? So, GG Sport, all that good stuff. Statistical matrix, leaderboard, friends, gems. These just free association here and all the things to do with the site. And that's the end of the episode. As I alluded to at the beginning, it is presented by GG Esport, and in association with them, we're going to be having a $3,000 giveaway worth of gems, keyword gems there, which has its own separate leaderboard for Worlds. So if you add me or Loco, and our usernames on the site are on the screen right now, so you can see what our aliases are, then if you add us, first of all, you get bonus gems just for being our fans, because that's just the sort of lifestyle you get to live if you follow me and Loco and, I don't know, big us up or something. And then also, you can talk mad shit to whoever does badly in the contest and does badly on the leaderboard. And if you beat us, maybe you'll be on a future episode. You definitely won't be, by the way. I made that last part up. But it'd be cool if you were, right? It'd be cool if, like, I came back and it was like, it's Thorin and Billy Bob 1, 2, 3 here versus Worlds. Loco got kicked out for picking the wrong one. Like, it's not going to happen, but it'll be nice to dream. There we go. Just leave it at that, shall we?